Hi everyone, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Nick.
And you're listening to It Takes Two, the podcast where two people take two movies with the same plot or premise and watch and discuss them.
And in this fantastically sponsored episode by Paramount themselves, we watched Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves and the abomination that is the 2000s Dungeons and Dragons movie.
It's not really sponsored, but they did give us a free cinema pass to go see this movie, which was great.
Yes. Paramount wanted us to do this podcast episode.
True. Yeah, but they didn't pay us to do it. I will say, we're recording this a little bit in advance because we watched the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves yesterday, which was the day it was released, March 30th. So this isn't coming out until near the end of April. But we are recording it just after it was released. The worst part of Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, I'm going to get into this right now, okay?
Okay, I'm prepared.
The worst part of the experience, right? So we got a cinema pass for free from Paramount Pictures NZ.
Perks of podcasting.
We went to our favourite cinema, Empire Cinema and Eatery in Island Bay.
Yeah.
We got our favourite seats in the cinema, middle of the middle.
Yeah.
The movie was a lot of fun. It felt like a D&D campaign. The characters were really good and complex. The story was compelling. The visuals were really nice to look at.
I know where you're going.
The worst part of the whole movie was that I had to sit through it knowing that immediately after this I was going to have to watch the abomination that is the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie.
It's so bad. What were they thinking? Christ.
I can tell you what they were thinking. What they were thinking was, I'm a 19-year-old who just got the rights to make a movie about this game I like, and it took me 10 years. He was 19 when he got the rights to make the movie, and then it took him 10 years to
it's
get
Ice Town all over again.
It's Ice Town. He's the Ice Clan. Took him 10 years to get the funding, and every single director that he pitched to the production company, they vetoed. He wanted Francis Ford Coppola to direct it, and they were like, nah. He had a whole list of directors he wanted to approach, and then they were like, no, you're gonna direct it. And he's like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And then he did it, and I don't think he's a fan of it. God, what a film.
So if you haven't seen Honor Among Thieves yet, I recommend either skipping this episode until you have, or hopefully you have seen it, because it is worth watching if you're interested in D&D at all. If you've been a fan of Stranger Things, which I think has been the main resurgence of D&D.
Well, interestingly enough, another TV show, not similar in some aspects, TV show, Freaks and Geeks. You know Freaks and Geeks?
I know of it. It was probably an era where I wasn't watching television because I didn't have time.
Right. Well, it's a 90s TV show, but it's oh, maybe it's not. I think it is. I've watched it, but it's been a while, because I think that Stranger Things, it's set in the 80s, but made in the 90s. But I could be wrong about that.
Okay.
Now that I'm thinking about it, but the main character of it is a kid who I think Mike in Stranger Things is a little bit inspired by.
Right.
He's the nerdy younger sibling of a cooler older teenager, and he's into D&D and all this stuff and whatever. And the guy who played him, John Francis Daley, co-wrote and co-directed Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
Oh, that's good. It comes full circle.
So he's a guy who was in this popular show as a kid, and then has been in almost nothing since, and now is writing and directing, and he wrote and directed this movie.
Nice.
So it's funny that you mentioned that you're talking about Stranger Things.
Well, it has been a popular resurgence. It's interesting to me, even in my workplace, finding out how many people I worked with that all played Dungeons and Dragons, and I was just like, what the hell is happening? And then even one of the staff that used to work there, who's a super gym guy,
Mm-hmm.
that's what he did when he wasn't at work. He went to the gym.
Yeah.
was like super obsessed with the game Pathfinder and played through it like 20 times, and I was just like, what? What is happening? Why is everyone like, everyone's secretly playing Dungeons and Dragons?
It's because it's fun. I got into D&D late in life. It was one of the things that like I wanted to play when I was younger, but I didn't have anyone to play with.
Right.
So it was only then. It was actually when I went. So I lived in New Zealand for a year, and then Australia for a year, and then I went back to Ireland for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And it was when I got back to Ireland, I discovered that my main group of friends back in Ireland had started playing D&D together like 2 months beforehand, but they'd only done 2 sessions. So then they were like, join us. So that's how I got into it, and now you're in that campaign with us.
Yeah. Shout out to Hear Us Out, co-host Paul, who's our current DM.
Yeah, he also is in a D&D show called Homebrew.
Yeah.
Or Homebrew Quest.
So
look them up on YouTube. If you're interested in D&D, which you presumably are. If you're listening, no, I don't know. We're gonna have people listening to this who have no interest in D&D.
Yeah, exactly.
Like my mom.
All right, let's get into the nitty gritty. Yeah, Honor Among Thieves is a fairly enjoyable movie. Everything that they in this recent movie did right was done the complete opposite in the 2000s version. So for a quick and dirty version of the explanation of anybody who hasn't played D&D, no matter what version, because we're at like several, well, there's lots of versions of D&D now.
And that is an interesting, because the 2000s movie is based on 2nd edition.
Yeah.
And this, the one that's released this year is, seems to be 5th edition.
Yeah.
So it's big differences in the edition of D&D that's even inspired by.
So basically it works as you have a person who's called a dungeon master, not to be confused with other dungeon masters out there if you're going online to find a dungeon master for yourself. So they're the ones that are doing the narrative campaign. They've got the plan. They're the ones setting up the encounters, and you pick a race from fantasy and a class. And a class basically determines what skills you can do and what you're proficient in, and then it's up to the DM to and also your character's backstory and motivations of why they're there and how they'd react to things in general, and then you have your DM basically have a narrative campaign, and your party, which usually is a group of other people, then interact with the DM based on the encounters and the quest that you were given. So, Honor Among Thieves does that perfectly. Does it absolutely perfectly. You have the setup of why they're in prison at the beginning of the movie.
Yep.
You have, this backstory. You have characters who are realistic to their classes and races. They're not doing weird stuff.
They've released character sheets for them, so we know all their alignments and things, which I had to look through, and they match up totally with how they're played in the movie.
Where you get to the 2000s movie, and I don't know how 2nd edition played, but I remember playing D&D as a kid, and it was basically you had... This is what I remember from actually playing, which is you had 1d20... and you rolled it, and as you scored high enough, it was either a success or fail. There was no boost, there was no add-ons, you may got a +1 on something, but that was about it. Where the 2000s movie feels like a Mary Sue fan fiction love fest about someone's personal character, because Ridley Freeborn, terrible name.
I did think that the names are kind of what people playing D&D would do. It reminded me, because one of the main characters' names is just Snails.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of The Adventure Zone, so the McElroy Brothers D&D podcast.
Yeah.
Where it ended up becoming like something that they took really seriously, but when they started out, they were doing it as like a one-off, one episode of My Brother and Me.
Yeah.
And Justin named his character Taco. and then you ended up with Taco becoming like the most powerful wizard or whatever, and it's like, okay, but his name is Taco.
Yeah.
And that's what Snails felt like to me, that someone like starting off the campaign like, yeah, his name is Snails.
Okay, so Ridley Freeborn is a rogue/thief. Okay. Snails, who's played by Marlon Wayans, of all people, is also a rogue-based thief, which is a terrible... Like, the DM should have talked to them before the campaign started.
You can't just have two rogues as a part. That's their whole party at the beginning. It's just two rogues.
Yeah.
That's not going to go well. At least in Honor Among Thieves, because in Honor Among Thieves, they do start out as a group of thieves.
Yeah.
But you've got a rogue, a bard, and a barbarian.
Yes.
Oh, and they had a sorcerer as well. Sorry, yeah, the four of them. And it's like, yeah, cool. That's a well-rounded group of thieves, because I think 3 out of 4 of them are chaotic, or chaotic good. I think they are. 3 of them are chaotic good, and then our good friend Forge is neutral evil, which makes sense.
Also in their party is a mage, a dwarf fighter who does literally nothing the entire movie.
Yeah.
And this elven ranger who also does nothing the entire movie, but her costume is hilarious because she's wearing plate mail, like a chest. I think that's the right.
Breastplate?
Yeah, breastplate. She's wearing a breastplate, which is not what rangers wear. Getting nitty gritty here, folks.
Yeah, I play a ranger.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to move around. You got to be able to move around and climb trees and shit.
And stealth and do things like that. And it's almost as bad as what I think I mentioned last. No, it won't be the last episode, but previous episode where I was talking about George Clooney's bat nipples.
Right.
Her armor has the most ridiculous, borderline Madonna breast augmentation on the plate, with like puffy nipples at the end of it, and also a belly button.
Yeah.
And you're like...
She's got like abs sculpted into her breastplate, basically.
It's like Leonidas, but on a chest plate. Like, it's ridiculous. But yeah, the issue that I had, other than the horrible 2000s CGI, because it's jarring. It's jarring. You see artifacting. It's so bad.
It's horrible, but it's so jarring because I was thinking about it, because like The Mummy came out around the same time, and the CGI in The Mummy is not great, but The Mummy is more believable.
Yeah.
I did look it up, but The Mummy also had twice the budget, so it makes sense. But like with the Dungeons and Dragons movie, it's like all the sets and costumes are like low budget stage play.
Yeah.
And then they're like putting them against this CGI that's just bad because of the time more than anything else. It's outdated CGI, but it's like, it's so jarring. So it's like you've gone to a stage play and they've put a CGI dragon on it.
Yeah.
Which, like, what? Why? Also, I did, like, one of the notes I took near the beginning of it was the main villain in it, so played by Jeremy Irons. I've forgotten his actual name. You've got a list of names there, but he literally at the beginning is like trying to tame a dragon, and what I wrote was he just out here taming dragons in a dungeon. Like, the writers took the title literally and did no research. Like, they just went Dungeons and Dragons. All right, he's in a dungeon.
There's a dragon.
Taming a dragon. That's what they do in this game, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of dragons in that movie.
Yes.
A lot of bad CGI dragons.
A lot. Versus
in Honor Among Thieves, one big chunky dragon who is wonderful.
Big Chungus the dragon is fantastic. The Ridley character annoyed the shit out of me because, yes, he allegedly starts off as a rogue/thief because, as mentioned, when Jeremy Irons fails to tame the dragon with his bullshit spell and the dragon gets crushed by the door, Rancor style.
Yeah.
He sets the water, the entire river that's running through the main of the ridiculously giant city on fire. And they're just like, oh, the lake's on fire. Let's go rob the mages, like, guild and steal a bunch of stuff. Mm-hmm. Which I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, this is going to move the campaign forward.
Yeah, that does sound like something someone would do in a D&D campaign.
the DM sitting there like, oh, cool, you're going to go investigate what happened.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
you'll
it's
meet
like,
these people.
I gotta go rob the thing.
I'm going to rob the thing, the guards won't be there.
Which is what would happen if your whole party was just two rogue thieves.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it's a DM's fault.
Yeah.
It's 100% the DM's fault in this case. The issue that I have is, so he goes from being a rogue-based thief, a rogue/thief, so it's just a rogue now, the class.
Yeah, the thief class no longer exists.
He is multi-classed into everything. He uses magic at one point. It turns out he's a latent sorcerer at the end. He also fights the main bad guy's like big buff fighter in full plate armor, wearing no armor whatsoever. So his AC, sorry, I'm getting really nerdy here. The AC is really low on Ridley. Fights him in a 1v1 with a magic sword that the elves give him and beats him and throws him off a cliff. And this is like previous to like getting stabbed by him. It's just a whole thing. He literally is just multi-classed and max leveled into everything at the end of the movie, and it's so annoying because it's like he's a Mary Sue.
And
it's
also,
literally this guy.
Realistically, that would take him like at least like 15 years of play.
Yeah. Not only the fact that you're correct on that, unless the XP gain and the campaign is just absolutely broken. It's so ridiculous. It feels like a D&D campaign not being run by a good DM.
Mm-hmm.
And you have one character who's like loud and obnoxious. Or one person playing who's loud and obnoxious, and everybody else who's just like too introverted to say something.
Or just don't care. And name their character Snails.
Yeah. It just feels like he's Mary Suing the entire camp. Oh well, I'd be able to defeat him because the elves gave me a magic sword. Also, I'm a powerful mage who can resurrect the dead, but I'm not evil. Yeah. What is happening?
Can I contrast that with the parts of Honor Among Thieves that feel like there's a DM who's a good DM in it?
Yes.
So it's things like they've got their sorcerer who tries at one point to like cast a spell, but someone blocks his mouth and he can't cast a spell because he can't speak. And I was like, yeah, 100%. The DM would be like, no, you can't talk, so you can't do that spell. The part where they're using an artifact to commune with the dead, so they can ask
the 5 questions.
They can ask. They can bring a corpse back to life to ask it 5 questions, and then it stops. And the first time they do it, he's like, he just ruins all of his questions because he's like, he says something. I can't remember what his first. He asks him a question. He asks him, like, was he at the battle? He's like, yes. And then he turns to the group and he asks them something else, but I can't remember exactly what he says at that point. And the thing answers it. And he's like, no, that didn't count. That didn't count, did it? And he's like, yes. And he's like, no, don't answer unless I speak directly to you, okay? Okay. And he's like, oh, God damn it. And it's like, I can imagine us in that scenario in our campaign with Paul doing exactly that. You know what I mean? Like, it's so reeks of a DM just being like, well, you phrased it as a question, so I'm gonna,
exactly.
Teach you a lesson here. I can't remember. There was a few other parts that I was just like, yeah, this is a DM'd game.
Yeah.
So you can like, I feel like, if you're watching it knowing nothing about Dungeons and Dragons, that's still just like funny moments. But if you're watching it as someone who has played any amount of D&D, you're like, okay, this is showing me the presence of the DM in this campaign.
Yeah. Even the party, the acting, everything is better in Honor Among Thieves, which is not like that high a bar to set, really.
Yeah, but it's a lot of fun. It was just a really fun movie to watch.
The 2000s one?
No!
Oh, good.
It's Honor Among Thieves.
Yeah, Honor Among Thieves is...
I know, but you're saying like it's, we've set a low bar for it to get over, but I think it's like well over the bar.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that like the bar was not set very high for it to be a better movie than the one we're comparing it to. In general, is it a good movie? Yeah, it's a fun movie if you have any interest in role playing or D&D in general. Like, it's a fun movie. I don't know what the rating on it was. It like PG-13?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Because there was a lot of fake blood in the 2000s movie. Like, way too much. Like, terrible CGI blood. Oh my god, it's just like overwritten all the joy in my life. The movie is just so bad. It's so bad.
Oh, no.
How did it get four? How did it get? Because it was 3 sequels, I think.
Yeah, so is that right? Yeah, so is this the one that should come out? It was either the 4th or the 5th D&D movie, but it is a reboot. It's not continuing on. Whereas,
God, yeah.
So it might have only had 2 sequels, is that right? And this was the 4th D&D movie?
Yeah.
Dungeons, or
Wrath of the Dragon was a made-for-TV sequel in 2005.
Yeah, and then there was one in, I think, 2008, is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It was a weird time. But it's interesting because probably, like you're saying, Honor Among Thieves came out, after people had a resurgence from D&D from watching Stranger Things and similar shows. Yeah. The 2000 movie must have come out not very long after Freaks and Geeks was around. So I wonder, was there also a resurgence in interest around then?
Not if you're the director spent 10 years trying to make it.
Yeah. Well, the director did spend 10 years trying to make it.
So if he started in the 90s, or like early 90s,
yeah,
and then kept trying to make the movie, and then like shows came out and were just like, oh, Freaks and Geeks and playing D&D and blah blah blah, they would have just been like, oh well, let's.
It might have helped him get funding to make it.
It's just, in comparison, it's like, I love 90s, 2000s movies that have like a little sprinkling of like really crappy CGI. Like the Scorpion King stands out because like even Corridor went and fixed that because of just how terrible The Rock Johnson looks in that.
But this is like most of the movie is bad CGI.
Yeah. I think for me the worst part of the CGI is you can tell crappy CGI, but you can ignore it when it's part of the background. This is just in your face the entire time. Lots of like low polygon, low textured close-ups of like terribly rendered dragons.
And sets, like the castles and things or whatever, are all just bad CGI.
Yeah. And the easiest way to get around that, to make it cheaper for yourself, well, obviously drone shots are a lot cheaper now than they, you would have had to use a helicopter or a crane or something. But you just get an aerial shot of an existing castle and you de-age it. Like, heaps of people do that to make really nice looking castles with CGI, and they don't look crap, but they only cost a couple of $100 to make. It
felt like an early PS1 game.
Yeah, it did.
But like cut with a stage production.
Yeah.
Or like footage from a Ren Fair or whatever.
Did you play any of the old Command and Conquers?
No.
Where they had like the graphics of like Command and Conquer, but then they had the cutscenes were all live action. So that's where you get the Tim Curry thing from.
Right.
Yeah. It felt like that.
Yeah. That's 100% what it feels like. It's just a weird, bad video game.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of oh my god, what's the one? It's a PC game. It's not called Toontown. It's a PC game where Christopher Lloyd is live action walking through a cartoon world.
No, I have no idea.
Okay. It's a really weird game. But it felt like that to me, except in that it's more like 2D animation. But it's still that, I don't know, that it was that kind of like jarring, like, here I am, a human in this fantasy world.
Yeah.
And fantasy means blocks. Fantasy means you're playing PS1 Spyro. And I am a human in PS1 Spyro, but I am live action.
Spyro was at least 3D.
Yeah.
So you could go up, left, and right. This is just, I don't know. Yeah, no, the party in Honor Among Thieves works out well. You get a bard, you get a fighter, you get, sorcerer, like it all works. A paladin comes in later and then leaves. Because obviously that
He's
guy's...
such an NPC. It's
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah. No, they even call it out in the movie. It's so fantastic. He's walking in a perfectly straight line. Oh, there's a rock in his way.
He's like classic lawful good character.
Yeah.
And there's like the bit where he's like they really ham up like the game element with him. Like it feels like video game NPC rather than anything else, because there's the bit where there's the real convoluted bridge puzzle, and he's like, you must take every second step to the left, and then and he like explains like this whole big convoluted puzzle, and then the guy just steps on it and the bridge collapses, and it's like,
I didn't realise the bridge started there.
Yeah. And then there's the bit where, like you were saying, they call it out because he walks in a straight line, and they're like, wow, he walks really straight, and he's like, oh, there's a rock, is he gonna go around it? Oh no, he's just gonna walk right up for it. He's very much like lawful good NPC who joins your quest for a bit, but isn't gonna be there for the final.
It feels like that the DM had planned out the characters for the campaign, and then the person who was supposed to play the paladin was just not available.
Right.
So the DMs has been having to just play the paladin as well, because that's what it feels like. Because like no one's gonna know that when you reached halfway across the bridge, you have to speak to like even like what does it even mean? Like in a D&D campaign, like I know this for a fact because it happened in our last our previous session, where one of our characters was stuck in a trap, and the rest of us, because we're not allowed to know, I say that with air quotes, that he's stuck in there. We're just spending the entire time banging on it, and he was in there banging on it there. We were just like, what's in the tube? And he's like, what's outside the tube? And it went on for like 20, 30 minutes. And that feels like very D&D, because you're allowed, you know things, but your characters aren't allowed to know them, so you have to play them in a way where they don't know.
Yeah.
And it was the moment from one of my favorite kids movies of all time, which I did post in our chat with a GIF. There's a sequence in Gremlins when one of the Mogwais gets taken to the professor at school, and he gets duplicated, and one of them's in a box, and one of them's outside the box, and they're both knocking on the box. And it's very cute in the movie, but that's exactly what the fuck we were doing in our last campaign session. Sorcerers in a tube.
It's also things like...
Us on the outside, bing, 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 bing.
And you have to play to your character in that, like my character would have been like the sorcerer was in the movie, where it's like, I'm not gonna listen to this, I'm gonna just do this thing. because I think when we played that session, I was like, well, does my character know like what? And it's like, no. And it's like, well, then he's not gonna try to do that. Why would he try to get into that tube if he doesn't know what's in it, you know? It's like if he knew what was in it, he'd try to break it, I guess.
Yeah.
Which probably also wouldn't work. But yeah, it feels there's a lot of it that feels like just properly feels like D&D.
Yeah.
Which is fun. Like even the opening of it is Elgin and Holga in prison for stuff that we find out, you know, he gives the explanation of how they ended up there.
Yeah. That's like the session 1.
Yeah, and
session 0.
In context to people who are like doing a trial to review their sentence.
Yeah.
And like without even waiting to hear what the sentence is, they like grab the Aarakocra judge and like jump out the window with them. And they're like, but we were gonna say you were pardoned. And it's just that real D&D thing of like, yeah, we're doing this properly, and then it's like, okay, now do the stupid thing.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely the judge is definitely the DM, where your party members grab the Aarakocra and jump out of like a 40-story window, and it's just like you guys were free, like
you didn't need to do this.
Yeah, you rolled high enough, so you would have been free. Like
we've absolutely done that in our campaign. It's the fun thing. I mean, almost literally, like we had someone. I don't even remember what the context was, why they jumped out the window, but we did have a character just like sprint and jump out of like a 2nd-story window for no reason.
Aim for the bushes, eh?
Yeah, it was it was a lot of fun. It was a fun session. And what was really fun about that is that like 2 of us who play very impulsive characters, we're doing this wildly impulsive shit, and the others were like, "What? Like, why are you doing this?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "Well, he would do it. I know he would do it. So it's like I don't want to jump." And like, because my character had to go out the third story window and up onto the roof, and it's like, well, he's gonna fucking jump. He's gonna do it. And they're like, but if he falls, he's gonna die. And I was like, he doesn't care. It's like, I care because I'm gonna be sad if he's dead, but this is just what he would do. So
Yeah.
I can't. I gotta, you know.
Gotta play to the game.
I made a decision early on to play a chaotic neutral character, and this is what I pay for it, you know. And all these, you know, good characters being like, but why would you do that? Or lawful or neutral, you know, whatever. And I'm like, well, he's chaotic, and this is what chaotic do. He gotta do what he do.
He gotta do what he do.
It reminds me, there's one of the notes I took watching Honor Among Thieves was about Forge's character, because Forge is a con man, and they know that from the beginning that he's a con man, but he's part of the group, and then he turns on them, and then it turns, you know, they go and find him and they think that he's gonna help them, and then it's like, oh shit, he's actually a bad guy, and I was like, oh, never trust a con man, and then I remembered that my character in our D&D campaign is a con man. And I was like, oh, the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Because I have made these people trust a con man. But, you know, he's not trying to con them. It's just how he got on in his, you know, in his backstory.
Fair enough.
As a con man.
Back to the movie.
Yeah, we're talking too much about... Well, I mean, you know, we're watching D&D movies.
Yeah, we play D&D. It makes sense that everything's related. The biggest nod to me and I guess extended fans of other genres, mainly FromSoft, is treasure chests being mimics. I'm pretty sure D&D originally came up with that concept, but it is so funny to me because, for an example, in Dark Souls 3, there are so many treasure chests that are mimics, and they are so terrifying because they're not just a mouth with a tongue that like lashes around your leg. They grow like spindly arms and legs and grab you and swallow you whole.
Yeah.
And it is super terrifying. First time you come across like a mimic that you didn't realise was in a chest. What were you going to say?
They follow it up immediately with the gelatinous cube as well, which is another like stereotypical fun D&D thing that you're like, gelatinous cube, a mimic.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really fun section of it where they're doing that, because they've been put into an arena to like get through a maze and stuff, and it's just like classic D&D monsters in it basically.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of fun.
It is a very fun movie based in D&D, and they did it really well in comparison to where could you... I'll pose this question to you. Mm-hmm. Where in the 2000s D&D movie would you say it is an accurate representation of the game of D&D at all, other than the fact that the movie starts in a dungeon with dragons?
Well, I think them starting in a dungeon with dragons is not accurate to D&D. I've never encountered a dragon.
In a dungeon.
Or I don't think I've encountered a dragon at all in our D&D campaign.
You're giving Paul ideas.
I think the naming of the characters, just how ridiculously they're named, is exactly what just a bunch of weirdos sitting around a table would come up with weird names for their characters. And
the BBEG, which is Big Bad Evil Guy, is called Mage Proteon. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a bad DM.
Yeah, I don't know, because there's things that don't make any sense, that it's like just like an empress, a young empress versus like a whole school of evil mages, and it's bizarre. They had the crystal maze part. they had a Crystal Maze part that I said to you, like, this is actually, there's a bit where they have Richard O'Brien playing the head of the Thieves Guild, and they want to get this jewel from him, and he's like, well, you must go through my puzzle box to get to it, and it's literally just Richard O'Brien playing Richard O'Brien doing the Crystal Maze. And so when it started out, I was like, this is just Richard O'Brien playing himself. And then as they're going through it, I was like, oh my god, the Crystal Maze TV show is just Dungeons and Dragons in real life, because like these are the kind of dumb puzzles you would have to like get through to get loot and things.
Yeah.
So I thought that bit was kind of D&D. Also, in both movies, there's sections where they like just go to do something and they end up getting stuck, and it's like, in my experience, it's very accurate that everyone forgets to check for traps and then ends up in traps. So yeah, I think that those maybe they did try to throw in, like, they had more different races, I feel like, in the 2000s movie, but they just kind of threw them all into, like, here's a tavern with a whole bunch of different races. It's D&D, you know, which is a bit weird. But they did have, you know, the elf on their team and whatever. Though they had a tiefling and they had an elf and a dwarf. I don't remember, were there any dwarves really in the Honor Among Thieves?
No.
There weren't any dwarves.
You had Bradley Cooper playing a halfling,
yeah.
who's the ex-husband of...
and he's not credited, because I waited for him in the credits and I was like, what? And then I looked it up and he's not in the credits on IMDb, and I was like, what's Bradley Cooper, right? But I realised the character wasn't credited, and it is, they have confirmed it is a cameo. I was like, did they just get a guy who looked really like Bradley Cooper? Like, what is this? Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely... I thought the leveling thing, though they didn't level up, like you were saying, the main guy just suddenly is like OP.
Yeah.
But when he's like fighting the other guy.
Which other guy?
The blue lip guy.
Who's like, honestly, realistically, the only person giving it 100%.
Yeah.
Acting wise. Like, Jeremy Irons
is like trying to act. I felt like Jeremy Irons was, in my opinion...
He was acting, but the cuts they were using are terrible. Right,
but I thought Jeremy Irons was trying to give the energy of Tim Curry in Muppet Treasure Island. You know what I mean? Like, he was like, well... Because people talk about Muppet movies, a human actors in Muppet movies is having to go one of two directions, which is the Michael Caine route of...
Playing it straight.
This is a Shakespeare production, these are all actors, and I am an actor, and we will all act.
Yeah.
Or Tim Curry, which is, these are all Muppets and I am also a Muppet. So I felt like Jeremy Irons trying to do that. He's like, I'm in a ridiculous fantasy thing, I'm going to be a ridiculous person. You know? That was the energy he was giving me. But the guy, the blue lip guy, like when he's fighting against...
The actor's name is Bruce Payne, and he played a character...
Bruce Payne? That's great.
Played a character called... Delmadar.
Okay.
Delta Alpha Mike Oscar Delta Alpha Romeo.
Delmadar. So when Delmadar was fighting snails, and I always forget the name. What's the main guy's name? Ridley Freeborn.
Yeah.
So when
he
fights both of them at different times, but both times he's like giving like 0% energy to fight them. He's just like standing there like he's bored, like parry, whatever. You're an idiot. And that felt like when you have like a level 2 character going up against a villain that they're supposed to have the whole party fighting.
Yeah.
So I thought, that was kind of accurate to D&D. Kind of. Which is a little bit what they do in... But
then how do you explain when he comes back later and just like wastes them 1v1?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But in Honor Among Thieves, they have it with Sophina, who's the wizard, the evil wizard that they end up going up against. And like that, when they try to fight her one-on-one, she's just like demolishing them, but they actually work as a team.
Yeah.
And they're able to get her, she has to work up a sweat to try and defend against them all, but they're actually trying to protect or trying to distract.
Yeah.
Because I assume they don't have a character sheet for his daughter, but she's definitely a rogue, right?
Yeah, because her only ability that we know of is the fact that she's got a pendant which makes her invisible, like 100% invisible
Yeah.
at will.
Yeah, but she also manages to sneak while this person is in battle, sneak up on them and put this thing on them. So she's 100%. But she has been, in fairness, for the past 2 years, she's been living with the rogue who is Forge, the lawful evil, or is he lawful? No, he's neutral evil rogue. So I guess it makes sense that, because he's trying to build her in his image or whatever. It makes sense that I think she's kept her dad's alignment or close to it. Like, I think she's in a good alignment, maybe closer, maybe she's neutral good or lawful good. I don't think she's chaotic good like he is. But yeah, I think she's definitely picked up on the rogue skills.
Yeah.
But they used to bring her around when they were thieves, right?
Yeah.
And she would hide. And
Yeah,
stuff.
so she would have been a rogue in the beginning anyway.
Yeah, so it makes sense. But they actually work as a party.
Yeah.
Which the people in the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie literally never do.
Yeah, there's no party cohesion in that at all.
Not for a second.
Ridley Freeborn being a Mary Sue, Snails just hitting on women and being cowardice, but he gets tricked into doing stuff in the most cartoonish way. He's like, I don't want to go. Okay, well, you can't come. Why can't I come? It's like, you serious, bro? Yeah, the Elven Ranger who does nothing other than be a storyline plot, a dwarven fighter who does nothing. Literally, he does nothing. He throws off some dudes and hits a couple of guys with an axe at one point, and that's literally it.
Yeah, most of the fighting is not done by the fighter.
Yeah, most of the fighting is done by the Mary Sue.
Whereas in Honor Among Thieves, most of the fighting is done by their barbarian.
Yes.
She's so typical barbarian, though, as well. You play a barbarian in our campaign. Did you feel like she was the most Mog-like character in Honor Among Thieves?
She's too smart to be my character. My character is an idiot.
I thought the dwarf in Dungeons and Dragons was like the dwarf version of your character.
Yeah.
But he's a fighter rather than a barbarian. I don't know, were there no barbarians in 2nd edition, or did...
I'm sure there were, because I'm sure it was...
It would have made more sense for him to be a barbarian. I
don't
know.
Yeah, it seems bizarre. But definitely Michelle Rodriguez plays as a fantastic barbarian through that movie.
Yeah.
With a very funny fetish.
Yeah, she definitely has a thing for halflings. It's so funny.
This is the fact that, like, Bradley Cooper's character's new wife is, like, way bigger than she is, and she's just like, I see how it is.
Yeah. So he's obviously got the same...
Yeah, same thing going on.
Yeah. He liked them big barbarian women.
Yeah.
And she likes little halfling men.
Yeah.
Little polite halfling men.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, it's good and funny and wholesome in the most disturbing way possible, which is the best. Like, everything you could want as a person who likes D&D is well looked after. Now, there's a lot of people who already don't like it, but that's just the internet. And normally the people who with the biggest opinions are usually the loudest.
Mm.
I say that, but we're literally doing an entire podcast episode about the well, not about that movie, but just in comparison,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's done really well as a D&D movie. I think it's really good.
It feels like D&D.
Yeah, I think it's really good as, like, I think they've compromised and gotten the best of both worlds. I think it works really well as a fantasy movie for people who don't know about or care about D&D.
Yeah, don't know what an owlbear
is. Yeah. But it also works really well for people who like D&D, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But then again, where I'm, like, super casual D&D player. I'm in one campaign, and I've only been doing it in my adult life.
Yeah.
And I don't take it super seriously. Sorry, Paul. I take it seriously too, but I don't. It's not like my life is D&D. You know what I mean? Like some people are like that.
Well, it's. I think, as an adult, and obviously real estate's very expensive. In New Zealand, for an example, I'm assuming if you lived in a larger city where real estate is cheaper, there'd be lots of places you go to play D&D. We use Discord, which is fair. I don't know what program Kyle uses. I don't remember for his campaign, but that's irrelevant.
Or we might be switching somewhat to D&D Beyond, because we play in 3.5e for the nerds listening, and we are in discussions to switch our campaign to 5th
I think
edition.
my idea is fantastic.
You think your idea is fantastic?
Yeah, but that's...
You always think your ideas are fantastic.
Yeah, that's because I play a half orc barbarian with no intelligence. I think my idea is fantastic.
Of what? Doing one...
We do a weird one. We're not going to talk about it. Don't want to go into detail. But it's... Yeah, and with Pathfinder 2 being released, like 2nd edition of Pathfinder being released, D&D 1 getting updates, like, it's a really good time to get into it. And unfortunately, you, as an adult, as we are, you do need people who are available.
Yeah, it's difficult, because we end up playing, if
like
we...
monthly,
yeah, I was going to say, if we play once a month, it's a good time, at this point. We did, I don't know, we've tried in the past to do it more frequently, but it's just difficult to get everyone free at the same time.
Yeah.
Especially because we play across time zones, which makes it even more difficult. But like we used to, because when we played in person, it was difficult to get us a time that we were all free, but it was cool to then have a day where we're all like in person doing it. And then when I came back to New Zealand, we were playing it that they were all in person and I was on Discord.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened and suddenly we're all on Discord. But it was cool because it meant that we, it was another way that we kept in touch.
Yeah.
And kept regularly socializing throughout the pandemic, because we could do it online because we'd already figured out how to do that.
And that is honestly the main thing, which is one of the great, uses of D&D, is the ability to use it as a catch up with all your friends you don't see.
Yeah. Because
then there's not like we should catch up for a coffee sometime. And then you don't hear from that person for 6 months, Jim Jams.
I don't know what you mean. I see that person.
Yeah, you see that person all the time. I only saw them 6 days a week for 5 years. No, 8 years, and never see them anymore.
That's on both of you, though. You gotta.
Oh, it's on both of us, is it? Yeah. I suggested, hey, we should catch up for a coffee, and then get ghosted, and it's on both of us. Right, okay. I see how it is. Should have just messaged them every week, sure. Anyway, enough personal shit.
You're saying it on the podcast, you listen to.
It was a jab, alright, buddy. Expect my DMs. Get in them DMs.
I'm trying to think of what else to talk about the movies. I did, watching Honor Among Thieves, at one point I just scribbled down where was this filmed, because...
Yeah, it does. There is a lot of... You're right. Unlike Game of Thrones, which is very Irish, and, you get the other, which is the vast flip side of that, which is... say, The Walking Dead, which is all filmed in the South. It's filmed in Georgia because the state literally gives people, tax breaks on filming in that area. It's very hard to pin down because they go to a lot of different places with different, environments.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've already named where it was filmed.
Ireland.
Yeah. Mostly. Some filmed in Iceland, which I assume are the volcanoes and stuff. We don't have those in Ireland.
No.
But yeah, mostly filmed in Northern Ireland and around County Down. Because I was watching it and I was like, this could be New Zealand. I was like, or it could be Ireland. And then turns out it is Ireland.
Yeah, if you want that, for filmmakers out there, if you want that green grass, you know what I'm talking about, the green grass, you film in Ireland or New Zealand.
Yeah, true. I was gonna say, if you want like a vast range of different kinds of topography, you film in New Zealand because that's what Peter Jackson did.
Yeah.
Because you've got the Southern Alps, you've got
New Zealand
fjords and glaciers.
New Zealand is just the Middle Earth.
You got volcanoes, you got those lush green fields, you got redwood forests, you got sulfur pits. Anything that you can think of, they have it in New Zealand. There's like desert. There's a desert road. Like it's ridiculous.
You don't go walking on that.
I'm sure you could go filming there, though. It would not be.
You'd have to clear it with the army.
Right.
It'd be an area like for Hunt for the Wilder People where it's not used for ordnance. So there is areas.
Yeah.
That are used as like live fire training, but not like live fire training.
I mean,
launching mortars into the distance, like lols.
Anywhere that you film, you'll have to clear it.
Yeah.
With government and stuff, so it's fair. The 2000s Dungeons and Dragons movie was filmed in Czech Republic, or Czechia now. I think it's just called Czechia now, but at the time it was called Czech Republic. But it was largely a budget thing.
Yeah.
So apparently, the sets and props there cost 5 times less than if they had shot it in the US.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of people do that.
Yeah. They also made equity deals between the effects houses involved so that they could limit the budget and pay less for the CGI.
They got what they paid for.
Yeah, well, at the time it was the biggest budget independent film ever produced.
That's really bad.
Yeah. It's interesting because IMDb lists their budget as $45 million, but I think that might be adjusted for inflation or something, because apparently the actual final total budget of the film was $35 million, but it was made with $21 million in cash during production.
Yeah, but you're probably not including
so the
advertising.
Yeah, so I think the 21 million was the production, and then the additional 14 million was on advertising and stuff.
Yeah.
Marketing. But it made 33 million at box office, so less either way.
Yeah. It just, like, I remember seeing the trailer when this movie came out.
Yeah. I thought I had seen this movie, but then we watched it and I was like, I don't think I've seen this movie.
I remember seeing the trailer because this was pre 9/11.
Yeah.
I would have been at the age where I went to the movies on the regular basis, like literally every week, because it was like $5 Tuesdays. So it was just like save my $10 pocket money and buy like $5 worth of candy, which used to last me, because before inflation used to last me the entire week. So I was just like restocking on like bags of lollies. And did you ever have Hubba Bubba made a roll of gum? Did you ever see that in Ireland?
I don't remember it. We did have Hubba Bubba. I didn't.
I know you're not a gum person, but I'm just saying, did you ever see Hubba Bubba and it used to come in a wheel?
I don't remember it.
So I'll describe it to you, and I'll describe it for you at home, because if you'd never seen this horrific product either. It was slightly smaller than a CD, but not by much.
Okay.
And it was about 3 centimeters thick.
Right.
So it was a plastic like disc, and you opened it and you took the plastic off the outside and you opened it, and like tin foil or some other kind of like wrap, you like placed the beginning of the strip on the cutter, and you could literally pull out lengths of gum in a rope.
Like sellotape?
Yeah, like sellotape.
Oh, jeez.
So they used to last me all week. Because it was like
horrifying.
Yeah, so just like, and it was always like, it was either pink or purple, so it was like grape or berry.
Ugh.
Plus like a large soda, like a sody, because they had like 99-cent sodies back in the day, which were actually good, not like these days, which they're terrible. And yeah, $5 movie ticket. And I remember seeing the trailer for Dungeons and Dragons and being like, seeing the CGI and just being like, this movie looks terrible, and never seeing it until now.
Yeah.
I knew it was bad. I
Yeah.
knew it was bad.
Yeah, we both knew it was bad. Because we watched
It has a
Honor Among
representation
Thieves,
of
and afterwards we were like,
Oh, no,
yeah. We have to go watch this shitty movie.
Yeah, and after the shitty movie and after dinner last night, I was just like, I don't have the mental capacity to record this podcast. I don't want to do it.
Yeah. So we have to wait till this
Yeah,
morning.
and I was just like, I'm tired, I want to go to bed. And you're just like, but we have to record a podcast. And I'm like, I don't want to. It's bad. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. But it could have just been done a hell of a lot better if they just hadn't have gone full ham into let's make everything CGI. Like, my favourite example...
Just do some practical effects, dudes.
My favourite example of what the fuck is that, which happened, I think, twice in the movie. Once I said audibly out loud, they get taken to the elf village where all the elves live, and you get a picture of them standing, like, you get the scene, and they're standing on a hill, looking towards the elf village, and it is like a tree with lots of lights on it. But it doesn't look like a tree. It looks like a scary, horror, Cthulhu-esque monster if it was just put underwater.
I took a note about the elf village, and it was, they must have been big mad when the Fellowship came out and Lothlorien looked so good.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can do it well.
Yeah.
It looked so terrible. It was like they were trying to create what Peter Jackson did with Lothlorien in The Fellowship of the Ring, but they just, I don't know what they did. It just looked awful. It looked so bad.
Yeah. It was undistinguishable of what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
If you had no context, you'd be just like, I don't know is this bad AI painting? Like, I don't know what this is. Did AI try and make a hand?
It's so bad. In contrast, in Honor Among Thieves, they go to the
it
Wood
really
Elves
well.
village,
Yeah.
which is like up in the trees, because that's where their tiefling druid lives.
Yeah.
And you can see like a whole lot of the trees have been burned down or whatever because of what Forge and Sophina are doing. And they want to save their home, which makes sense. But like, that looks, I mean, it looks normal. It doesn't look like Lothlorien is like beautiful in Lord of the Rings, but this looks like it looks livable.
Yeah.
You know, and believable. Whereas the one in Dungeons and Dragons is like, what is this? Where are they? Is this hell?
Yeah. It's just a bad movie.
Yeah, true.
They did have a beholder in it.
They did have a beholder and a mind flayer, but the mind flayer didn't work the way mind flayers actually work.
Yeah.
Because it was like a weird parasite thing.
Yeah, it felt more Stargate SG-1 than D&D.
Yeah, but it was supposed to be a mind flayer.
Yeah.
That's what that was. But yeah, it was a weird... I don't know why they made the choice to put the mind flayer inside the person.
No, I don't know. I don't know why they made lots of choices in that movie.
Yep.
You want to go on to some box office,
Yeah.
and well, we can't really do box office. Box office doesn't really make sense because it's literally opening weekend for Honor Among Thieves.
At the moment, at the time of recording, Honor Among Thieves has made less than $100,000 in box office, but I suspect
we didn't help to that.
It will.
Thanks, Paramount.
No, I suspect it will make a lot more money.
Yeah.
Because we're recording this on Friday morning, so it hasn't even hit, and that's New Zealand time even, so it hasn't hit box office, it hasn't hit opening weekend properly anywhere else. But the budget for it was $151 million.
Yeah.
And we already discussed the budget in box office for the other movie.
Yeah.
In terms
Cost lots, made nothing.
Cost lots made almost as much as it cost.
Almost as a flop.
Yeah, true. So one of my favourite bits of trivia about the 2000 movie is that in an interview someone asked Jeremy Irons why he did this film, and he said, "Are you kidding? I just bought a castle, I had to pay for it somehow."
Yep, that's... that feels like his performance, yep.
Yep. Apparently there was an alternate ending that was shot where the Empress destroys her rod and then proclaims that the heroes are the champions of the throne. So your Mary Sue
Oh my god.
character becomes the Emperor.
Oh.
And then the director, Courtney Solomon, said that it was such a bad idea he didn't even include it on the DVD release. He was like, no, this isn't even getting in as a deleted scene. This is too bad. What a terrible idea. And yeah, and I already talked about the stuff they did to try and minimize the budget. So that's about all the notes I had for that one, to be honest. The other one I mentioned, John Francis Daley, who played Sam in Freaks and Geeks, was the guy who wrote and directed it.
Yeah.
Or co-wrote and co-directed it. Wizards of the Coast made stat blocks for the main characters that show their abilities and attributes, so I've had a look at those, which is fun. It's interesting because their AC is all lower than what I would have expected, but their HP is all higher than what I would have expected.
Yeah.
So like they've got way more health than I thought, but way less like armor. So I don't know how that works out.
I feel like the DM's just like, you can take a lot of damage.
And the other bit of trivia I took down was that previously Rob Letterman was set to direct it, but they wanted Ansel Elgort to be the lead role, to be the role that Chris Pine ended up doing. And then when it moved over to Paramount Pictures, they recast it with
Right.
Chris Pine. And I just wanted to say, I don't think I would have enjoyed that movie half as much if Ansel Elgort played Edgin. No offense to Ansel Elgort really, but just not as compelling an actor to me. And I'm not like a huge Chris Pine fan, but he was really good. All of the acting was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there was a bad egg in Honor Among Thieves. I think all of the acting was pretty spot on. The characters felt like D&D characters. The story was compelling, and it goes interesting places. We haven't spoiled too much of it, I don't think, because we didn't go into really what happens. But
no.
Yeah, it's a very enjoyable film.
Yeah.
That's about it, I think. Did you have anything else you wanted to add about the movies?
Support the movie, support nerds, play D&D, stay safe out there.
Yeah, okay, that works.
Oh, well, no, you had to do the thing, the other thing.
About our socials, yeah. So you can find us on Twitter and Instagram, ittakes2_pod. We now have a Tumblr, which I just started because I felt like it.
You felt like getting away from the toxic platform that is Twitter.
A little bit. We still post on Twitter. But if you want to follow us on Tumblr, I believe we're also ittakes2_pod on there. Facebook, ittakes2pod. Our website is ittakes2.co.nz. We have a YouTube channel. We're everywhere. We're all the places. Find us.
That's it.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Right. I've covered everything, I think. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah. I hope your dice roll nat 20s and not nat 1s.
Yeah. Goodbye.